Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all excellent. Today, we're going to compare and contrast the tones coming out of the Boogie Studio Preamp and the Mark IV. The way I'm running all of this is pretty straightforward. I am going to take the output of the Studio Preamp and connect it to the effects return of the Mark IV so that I can use the Mark IV's power amp. That's going to keep everything pretty fair when it comes to the comparison. So we're really just going to compare the two preamp sections here. The Mark IV graphic EQ is placed after the effects loop, so I've disabled the graphic EQ on the Studio Preamp, and I'm literally just going to hard patch stuff. Like I'm going to take a cable from the Mark IV and either plug into it or plug into the Studio Preamp. When I'm using the Studio Preamp, I will have the effects loop engaged. When I'm not using it, the effects loop will be bypassed. I'm going to try a couple of different guitars, just try some kind of clean sounds all the way through to some absolute filth. Check it out. So there you go. They are well within spitting distance of one another. And if anything, I would say any differences there are probably just come down to differences in a few components in the circuit. Boogie are kind of notorious for chopping and changing values even between the same series, you know, the Mark IIB, the Mark IIC, the Mark IIC+, the Mark IIC++, all those kind of things. Overall, they kind of do the same thing, and hearing them through the same power amp, I think definitely kind of equalizes the field. It would be really interesting to hear, say, a Mark IIC Plus next to a Mark III, next to a Mark IV, next to a Mark V, and see how close you could get all of those, including the differences in the power amp topology. But just hearing the difference between preamps here, I mean, there's so much written about these supposedly mythical circuits, especially the Mark IIC Plus. But for my money, the Mark IV sounds every bit as good as the studio preamp in this kind of setup. And I'm sure if you had a bunch of different C Plus models, for example, that they would all sound pretty close. You might prefer one ever so slightly, just depending on where you set it. But it's a Boogie. It does what it says on the tin, and especially hearing it through the same power amp with the same guitars, I think kind of illustrates that. So the studio preamp often kind of gets called a poor man's 2C Plus, but you know, that's probably a good thing. These things, you could get one secondhand, I'm guessing for around 800, 850 Australian dollars if you're lucky, and pair it with a decent power amp, and you've basically got a Mark IIC Plus, but you haven't had to spend like 5,000 Australian dollars plus, or just go out and get a Mark IV because you have independent controls for the channels, and you've got that Rhythm 2 channel, which I think sounds fantastic as well as all the foot switching options on there. So yeah, let me know what you thought in the video description, or the comments I should say, because I do the video description. I'll probably just tell you about all the same stuff. Leave a comment, let me know which you preferred. If you've got a Mark IV, or you've got a studio preamp, or a quad, or a tri-axis, or a Mark II, or a Mark III, let me know, because they're wonderful, wonderful machines. And if you've got any tips or tricks you feel like sharing with me and the rest of the community, I am all ears. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.